Hey there, money heroes. It's Stephanie, your host and fellow explorer on the Be Your Money Hero podcast. We're diving into the nitty-gritty of personal finance and having real conversations about how money, spirituality, psychology, and our life stories all dance together. This podcast is educational, but I'm not a therapist, and my guests and I cannot offer personalized advice through a podcast. My goal is to create a safe place for you to learn and get curious about yourself and expand the way you've thought about money. So if you're ready, let's dive in. All right, today we have inspirational author, speaker, voiceover artist, and creator, Victoria Wright. She has embarked on a journey to find her true self, and in the process, she has remembered to be whole, to look inward for guidance, and to know her truth. Formerly an executive in both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors, she stepped away from her 14 years in finance marketing to become an author. She's published 4 inspirational books, and her 5th will launch in early 2024. Victoria is also a voice-over artist and is the host of the EV Print Series podcast. Her work can be heard on Audible and all of the major podcast feeds. Victoria is from Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, and is a member of the, I want to make sure I say this correctly, Victoria, Wampanoag. Will you say that?
Wampanoag.
Wampanoag tribe of Gay Head. And she and her family live in Inglewood, Colorado. So welcome, Victoria. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And you didn't do too bad on the Wampanoag.
Thank you. So today's episode, we want our listeners to really walk away with some tools on how they can use journaling to help them hear their inner wisdom. And I'm really excited for you to share more about that. But will you start us off to tell us a little bit about your story and how you went from a 14-year career in finance marketing to becoming an author?
Sure. Oh, and it's an interesting one. So I would say a couple of years prior to the pandemic, I was in my early 50s. I had a team, a big budget, doing corporate marketing type things. And I was demoted. And it kind of threw me for a loop. First of all, because it wasn't, my performance didn't reflect a demotion. I'll just say it like that. And there was a big reorganization. And so things had just happened. And I was distraught. I went to HR and I said, hey, look, this isn't, passing the sniff test. What's going on here? And so they agreed to help me find a new role, which was wonderful at first blush, but it took 7 months for me to find that role. And so I wasn't actually working. Granted, I was being paid. And if you were looking from the outside in, you'd be like, how could that be bad? 7 months, you're getting paid. In all honesty, it was one of the worst times of my entire life because I had been demoted. My career had only been going up. I have a business degree. I have a law degree, kind of A-type personality. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Family, house, travel, car, all that kind of stuff. And then it comes to a screeching halt. And someone tells me that, no, you're not all that. And we're going to say, we're going to demote you. So the ego took a huge hit. And I literally needed to, find myself again. And in that process, I was able to work with a friend who is a personal coach, and she got me into journaling. And that then led to my spiritual awakening. and me recognizing that, yes, granted, I was demoted, but the universe had kind of a say in that. I obviously wasn't listening to some of the hints that it was giving me before, so it had to take drastic action. And and as such, I was listening now because my world was literally upside down.
Will you tell us a little bit more about that spiritual awakening?
Sure, yeah. It was it was very interesting because as I was working with my personal coach and she was having me journal, there was a lot of emotions that were flowing at the time, and I remember sitting there, and it was kind of interesting. I was sitting there, and I would get a funny twitch in my face. And I was like, when you're thinking, oh, that's a muscle spasm. And, but this muscle spasm kept on occurring and kept on occurring. And I remember telling my coach this, and she's like, I think that there's a little bit more behind that. Why don't you sit there and just meditate? When you're journaling, ask the question, is there something else going on here? And through that process, yes, there was a lot more going on there. I started to hear my higher self. And as I was journaling, in most of the instances, as you start off journaling, you might be like a diary, like I do this, I did that, it was a great day, I feel this. And then eventually, as I continued to journal, it turned from I to you. And all of a sudden, I was dictating what I was hearing in my head. Like you're amazing, or you are more than your job, or you are, all of these things that started to come to me. And I'm like, anybody else hearing this stuff? Like you generally aren't open to sharing that kind of thing when you're hearing voices in your head. And luckily, my coach also had a spiritual awakening, and she giggled. She's like, "Yeah, you do think you're crazy because you do hear voices. Crazy things start to happen. A lot more synchronicities or coincidences." And as soon as I accepted that this was what was happening to me, it became it was scary, but yet very, very exciting, because I realized, for me, through my journaling, I had this whole new world opening up to me, and all I had to do was ask a question and I would receive an answer. Sometimes it was written, sometimes I would hear it, sometimes I would see it, sometimes someone else would say it, but I would get an answer. And so that's I guess, the short version of my awakening. It was pretty messy. I will admit.
I know from personal experience that's usually how it is. Do you think that spiritual awakening would have come to you if you had not gone through those hard things?
No, it probably would not have come to me. Most people that I meet that have been able to experience this, it does come at a time when you are really at one of your lowest points, where you're just like, you're throwing up your hands and you're just like, WTF, like, what more, or what am I not doing? Or, you're just sitting there and you open yourself up to, you ask the question, and then you expect to hear an answer in some form or fashion. I don't know. I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. And so, I do think most people need to go through some type of hardship to realize that they have been living in the dark, that there is something a whole lot better out there. And once you recognize that, then, the doors kind of open and you really can't go back.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you had grown up in Martha's Vineyard. I would imagine you were surrounded by a lot of wealth. How do you think growing up in those surroundings impacted you?
Oh, it's interesting. So I am, native from Martha's Vineyard. That's where our tribe is located. And I always like to tell people when they say, "Oh, you're from the vineyard," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the vineyard." Not like we vacationed on the vineyard and we didn't, we worked with the people or for the people or, in some trades that supported the lifestyle of the people that could afford to visit and vacation on the island. So, we were, in middle class, maybe a lower middle class family, times sometimes lower middle class. But it was always an odd thing because I think wealth there, you had old money, old New England money, which you could see someone walking down the street in duck boots and a big floppy hat and, and cut off shorts. And you wouldn't know that they were millionaire, billionaires, And then at the same time, you could have, what you would say new money being flaunted around or whatever. But there was always that underlying knowing that most of the people that I hung around with had more. Maybe not the people I grew up with that were from the island, but everybody else that, particularly in college and stuff like that, everyone had more. Like if they didn't make enough money that summer, they would, college was still paid for. It wasn't like they weren't going to college or, they didn't have to have those 3 jobs or, so it kind of skewed my view on money and privilege. I saw a lot of privilege, a lot of privilege.
How do you think that showed up for you when you were going through college and then into adulthood?
It gave me a drive. I wanted to be able to live. I don't want to say that. I wanted to have the luxuries that I saw. I wanted to travel. There was a lot that I, had dreamed about and wanted to do. But at the same time, I wanted to be a different rich person. I didn't want to be like them. And plus, being a diverse female, that also comes with, its side effects. And so thinking if I had that kind of money or if I earned, had wealth like this, maybe some of those impacts would, I wouldn't be so impacted if I didn't have money. So it gave me a drive. It definitely gave me a drive to want to acquire some kind of wealth.
Did that view of money shift after you had your awakening?
Yes, it did. Yes, dramatically. Not to say I don't want money. I will say it's still here. I am focused on bringing in more abundance and wealth into my life, but wealth and abundance means something very different to me. When I stepped away from my corporate position, I was making good money, but it always felt like I was nickel and diming. Okay. Do we really need to do it this way? Or can we maybe do it? I had a very much of a lack mindset, even though there was money coming in. Now that, I stepped away from that and my financial situation is different, my view on it is that I've been lucky to be able to get to the place where my view is that I am cared for, and that when I need it, it will come. And so I'm a bit more open with the resources that we have. I would say more so than I did when I was bringing in, I had a steady income.
Do you think that your family dynamic and the way that you grew up, or even the way that perhaps previous generations had handled the resources that they had, do you think that those things had any impact on the way that you originally handled money, or how you felt more? You had said the lack mindset, but being more careful with those resources because maybe they weren't as abundant earlier in your childhood or in past generations. Do you feel like did you feel like there was any of that?
Yeah, no, yes, very much so. Very much taught that, work hard. If you work hard, you'll be rewarded. Keep your head down, so that is, so culturally, there's that comes into play. Um, you know, um, don't be boastful. Just when you work hard, you will be rewarded. And so that's what I was taught. But then, yet, what I saw in my life, where I grew up and all of these things, I would see people not working as hard as I was, or it seemed like they weren't working as hard as I was, yet they just had wealth. It just came to them. It's because who they were, or, whatever it was. So it was this, I had these two things that I had been fighting. And in all honesty, I'm still fighting those seeds that had been planted in my head, those experiences that I lived and had seen. I am still fighting that today to say, look, yes, there's a component that you have to take action and focus to achieve the things that you want, but it doesn't have to be hard work. It's, in all honesty, it needs to be joyful work. You get the most from what you do when you are joyful and enjoying it versus, smacking your head against the wall and, doing the 9 to 5 and a weekend every other, week. So, that, it's wonderful that I can sit here and say that to you. I just have to continually remind myself that that's what it is.
Well, I think that is something that has been programmed for many generations, especially in America, because that's the messaging I have always been given, is that you have to work really, really, really hard for long enough that you can actually reap some of those benefits. But the interesting thing that I am seeing is this shift where we have gone from, in the 20s and 40s, somebody was more likely to work for the same company for that entire time and climb up the corporate ladder. And then when they retired, they would have a pension and they'd be taken care of. A lot of that has shifted. So now we are seeing more where it's not uncommon for people to change jobs every few years. And it actually works really well for a lot of people because they can go somewhere else and get a higher bump in pay than they would if they stayed at the same place to just get those traditional raises. But now with generations that are coming, because we aren't feeling the pressure to stay in that same job, we're starting to lean into the work that we actually love and enjoy. And because we love and enjoy the work that we're doing, we don't want a retirement the way that our grandparents or our parents maybe had, because we enjoy the work we do and we get fulfillment out of it. And so we don't need to escape from it. But with that, I tell my daughter that she's 11 and she's writing books already. And she was telling me the other day how she just feels a lot of pressure to get this book done, and how she's already been working on it 2 months and it's not done yet. She's like, I'm running out of time. And I was like, honey, you're not running out of time. Like, you're writing a fiction book. It is not uncommon for those to take years. It was like J.K. Rowling, took 17 years to write all of her books. And she's like, 17 years? How am I going to make any money if it takes 17 years? I'm like, honey, you're 11. It's okay. But I told her in the book, What Happened to You, which is one of the best books I've ever read, especially regarding trauma and how the brain works in early childhood development, by Dr. Bruce Perry. He describes our brain like an upside down triangle. And those more creative parts of our brain are up here at the top. And when we start getting stressed, the first thing to start shutting down is that creative part of our brain. And we go down into the more survival parts of our brains. And so when we're thinking about being good at our work, being joyful in the work that we do actually helps us to be better and to move into that more quickly. And so I love that you had mentioned that. And when we do get stressed and we do go into that survival mode, and when we are deep in the frustration, journaling is one of my favorite tools to just kind of word vomit everything out. And then take a step back and be like, okay, but I would love to hear more about what you have learned through your journaling career, if so to speak. But do you have a process for journaling?
Yeah, I do. And I think it ebbs and flows, but generally I try to journal first thing in the morning before I interact with anyone, definitely before I look at my phone or do any technology type things. And a lot of times I will open up my journal and I'll say, "Good morning, beautiful." So I start off with a compliment to myself to help raise my energy, to wake me up and to remind myself that, I am a beautiful being, So, and then I put out there an intention for, if there's something specific that I'm looking to gain guidance on or get an answer on, I'll put an intention out there that, this is what I'm seeking. And then I just let it flow. I'm old school. I write in cursive, and, so it's sometimes it really just will flow. And I am given so much guidance and wisdom. Other days, it doesn't flow as much because I'm too much in my head. And when I get into that place, then I try to take a step back and do some appreciation. And I just, what I am thankful for, as simple as, some fresh orange juice in the morning to my family, or, my pup gave me a sweet kiss this morning, whatever it may be. And then that then allows me to also get back into the flow of things, and then allow myself to journal. I don't, I know like there's this book called Morning Pages. I don't say that there needs to be a specific amount that someone needs to journal. If it's flowing, then let it go. And if it's not, put it down, try it a little bit later if you want to. But when I talk to people about journaling, I try to equate it as it's like my best friend. I've had people say to me, "Wonder if someone reads it." like, I can't put stuff in there. I mean, and I'm thinking, wow, if you're that scared to share, but I just, I like to think of this as my best friend who I can tell absolutely anything to, and they will not judge me on it whatsoever. I remind myself that I am safe in this place. I can rant and rave and say nasty things if I need to, but the process is to get that out, because if I don't get it out in journaling, it will just go in this circular, thing in my head, and it will run and run and run and run and take me to a place that I don't need to be in. So, that's really what I like to do. And if I don't get the opportunity to journal, I feel like I'm missing something, because it truly is a gift that I'm giving to myself. Like you said, it's like vomiting on the page. I am emptying out the stuff that I do not need, that is not serving me. I am getting it out, letting it go into the wind, or keeping it on the piece of paper. And if it's really bad, sure, I'll rip it up or burn it. But, I'd rather my head be holding a lot of different things than some of the things that I need to get out in my journal.
And I think that's so important, just not only for our mental health and our spiritual health, but even for our physical health. Because when we hold on to those things, I know that I use it specifically for when I'm feeling like I've been cheated, or I'm feeling resentful, or I feel like something's out of my control. When I just put all of those words onto the page, all of the mean things, maybe even that I will never say, it gets it out. And so then I'm not holding that stress and that tension in my stomach or in my shoulders or in my head. I've released it. And then I can take a step back and say, okay, what control do I have? And what action do I want to take from here to better whatever situation this is? And so it's such an important role. And I think that words work for many people, like you and me and my daughter, my sister. We love to write those words. And for other people, it could even be art, whether it's doodling or painting or whatever the case may be, because do you think that it has that same effect?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Because, our brains are absolutely amazing. They can do so very much, hold so very much, but at the same time, there needs to be, I believe, we can help ourselves by giving it some type of structure. And, if it is an art journal that someone's doing, I mean, obviously emotions can pour through art. My books that I've written before, Evie Prince, she's an artist, and that is how she gets her emotions out, is through her art. So, being able to do that is very, very important. Even just listing things out, not even having full sentences, just emotions, just, like little, you're just spitting it out. And, it doesn't have to be anything spectacular. But to your point, as long as you get it out. Now, that's particularly for journaling when you have emotions that you're working through. But say, you are working on a project that you have no clue how you're going to get to that end game. Journaling also helps you to put down where your fears lie. Okay, I want to create this kind of a business, X, Y, and Z, but what I know is this, and I do not know what these next steps are. And I've done this plenty of times. What's my next step? I want to do this and get to Z. What's my next step? in journaling, I've been able to find that answer. And it's really maybe one or two steps. So if I'm at A, I want to get to Z, I might get to C, but it at least helps me to continue that momentum forward. The gratitude, I mentioned gratitude journals too. Those I feel are very, very important because we can find ourselves in lack or just in our heads so much that we can't see all of the beauty that is truly in our life. Even when we are in a very, very dark place, we are still breathing. We are still being able to feel, being able to identify the things that we are thankful for. It changes the perspective. And then, of course, it opens our heart up for more. And then, of course, if you're really working on some hard stuff, you've got the therapy kind of journaling, which I think all of this is. But sometimes when you've got some really deep, dark things going on there, being able to put it down on paper and having the courage to write it out allows it to open up doors. And, sometimes you can do that by yourself. Sometimes you can do it with a therapist or whatever it is. But there are so many ways that you can use journaling and so many types of journaling that you can do. All of them help you identify and who you are in a deeper sense.
Absolutely. So I know that you have a book coming out, and I wanted to make sure that we got to hear a little bit more about it. So will you tell us a little bit about the book that you have coming out?
Sure. So the book is entitled The Quiet Butterfly, and it's my debut young adult book. It is about bullying, but it's about bullying from outside, others bullying the main character, and she experiences bullying. But it's also about the bully that's inside. And I wrote the book because that is still something at this age that I am dealing with. I still hear that voice in the back of my head that doubts, creates doubt, creates unworthiness, limits my life. And I thought, if I'm still managing through this with more than half my life over, how are young people doing this? And I have a teenage son. He's experienced bullying. And, I'm not trying to say that this book, because it's a fiction piece, it's a novel, are going to stop people from bullying, but it's what happens after the bullying. It's those seeds that get planted in our head. And it may not be that someone is really out there, with malice and want to say something horrible to you. It's those seeds that can be planted that are coming from people that love you, and they think that they are guiding you in the right direction. But when that thing gets planted, sometimes they grow and sometimes they don't. But when they do, and they can grow big and strong, and then they kind of rear their ugly heads much later in life, and you realize, why am I scared to do this? Or why don't I think I can do this? And if you take the time to go deep and maybe even ask, the child within you, why am I feeling this way? You may learn that it's something that happened, you were bullied, someone may have said something not nice to you, whatever, and you believed it. And now you got this limitation on you that you're trying to work through. So my goal with the book is that to at least provide reminders to the reader. It is dubbed as a young adult book, but I do think that, adults can take some wisdom away from it. But it is reminders that, we do have control over what we believe. And we don't have to, just because someone bullied us and spewed their toxin on us, it doesn't mean that we have to accept it. We don't have to carry it. We don't have to own it. That's theirs. We can do something different than that. And that's what I hope that particularly kids are able to take away from that. So, and then I've got there's poems in there and nature. I believe very much in nature and nature's wisdom. And so that's kind of woven throughout as well. So
I'm excited to read it. And I think my daughter will be excited to read it as well. So where are people able to find you and your books?
Oh, so this book, The Quiet Butterfly, is available for pre-order on Amazon. So for an ebook. And all of my other books are also on Amazon. And then if anyone would like to visit my website, which is healingwords.online, all of my books are available there. And they could pre-order a print copy, an autographed print copy through my website. And the book will launch on the 28th of February. So it's right around the corner.
Perfect. So I'm going to move into some of the closing questions that I ask every guest at the end of the episodes. But what does abundance mean to you?
Freedom. Freedom of worry, freedom of limitation, freedom to do what my heart desires.
Yes. And what is some of the best advice you've ever received?
That I have everything that I need already within me.
I love that. Thank you so much, Victoria. I am so glad that we got the chance to talk and to share this information. I think it'll be very helpful.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
As we wrap up this episode of Be Your Money Hero, remember that your financial journey is a path of self-discovery. If you have questions that you would like answered on the show, please submit them to info@beyourmoneyhero.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share your thoughts and insights with our growing community. Subscribe for more empowering discussions. And always remember, you have the power to be your money hero. Until next time, keep growing, money heroes.